بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم اللهم صل على سيدنا ومولانا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا ومولانا محمد وأصحاب سيدنا ومولانا محمد وبارك وسلم صلاة والسلام عليك يا سيدي يا رسول الله وعلى آلك وأصحابك يا سيدي يا حبيب الله صلاة والسلام عليك يا سيدي يا رحمة للعالمين وعلى آلك وأصحابك يا سيدي يا شفيع المذنبين. Right, so before we move on to this next chapter on Salatul Kusuf and Khusuf, the lunar and solar eclipse, a couple of narrations that I want to bring to your attention. Because again, I think it would be unjust of us not to look at as much evidence as possible in terms of number of units of Taraweeh. There's a narration which is narrated by Sayyidina Sa'id bin Yazid radiyallahu ta'ala, in which he mentions regarding Sayyidina Umar radiyallahu ta'ala commanding or instructing Sayyidina Ubay bin Ka'b radiyallahu ta'ala, and also Sayyidina Tamim Dari radiyallahu ta'ala to lead the people in prayer, and there it mentions 11 units. There's another narration in which is narrated by Dawood bin Hussein. He says that the people prayed 11 units as well. Interestingly, both of these narrations are actually from Muwatta of Muwatta Imam Malik. So the narrations are actually narrated and collated by Imam Malik. But what's interesting would be I've already told you what the amal of the ulama of Medina actually was. And Imam Malik, as you know, his title is Imam Darul Hijrah. He's the Imam of Medina, Imam of the city of the migration. And he's still known famously by that even today. There's only one Imam of Darul Hijrah, that's Imam Malik bin Anas radiallahu anhu. And so we already discussed that their action and their preference was 41 units in total, including witr. Actually more than 20. So the narration that is used most famously is that narration of Sayyidah Aisha radiallahu anha. And with that, I've already explained to you that it does not in any way indicate that that is Taraweeh. In fact, the likelihood is that that is Tahajjud, and in many books you will find it listed under the chapter of Qiyamul Layl and Tahajjud as well. So, we move on to next chapter, Salatul Kusuf and Khusuf. So, in Arabic, Khusuf with Kha is lunar eclipse, and Kusuf with Kaf is solar eclipse. And regarding this, Imam Saghabji, he records a hadith narrated by Sayyidina Abu Musa al-Ash'ari radiyallahu ta'ala. He says that there was a lunar eclipse, or in fact in this narration, Sayyidina Abu Musa al-Ash'ari radiyallahu ta'ala, he says that there was a solar eclipse. فَقَامَ النَّبِي صلى الله عليه وسلم فَزِعًا. The Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم stood up and he was worried. And look at this, فَزِعًا يَخْشَى أَن تَكُونَ السَّاعَةُ. The Prophet ﷺ was worried that this was the commencement of Judgment Day. Now, that raises some questions. The simple answer to all of those questions, this is not just this narration. Sayyidah Aisha radiallahu anha narrates, and others have narrated as well, various times. For example, when the wind became extremely strong, when it came dark all of a sudden, these kind of situations the Prophet ﷺ would worry. And when he was asked, the Prophet ﷺ said that Allah punished previous nations in these ways. And so when I see a sudden change in this, it worries me. And secondly, the Prophet ﷺ said that whoever knows Allah best fears Him the most. And who knows Allah more than the Prophet ﷺ? So that anxiety and fear is simply out of the Prophet ﷺ knowing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala more than anyone else and fearing Him more than anyone else as well. Right? So the Prophet ﷺ, it mentions that the Prophet ﷺ came to the masjid then, and he says that the Prophet ﷺ prayed, and the qiyam and ruku and sajda was so long that I've never seen the Prophet ﷺ pray so long.
That's this during the eclipse or after?
Yeah, during
the eclipse.
And after the conclusion of that prayer, the Prophet ﷺ, he stood up and he made, he gave a sermon or an announcement, or the Prophet ﷺ simply said that these are signs of Allah. They have nothing to do with anyone living or dying. But in fact, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He warns His people with these signs. When you see these kind of signs, then remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and pray to Him and seek forgiveness from Him. Why? What was that? What was the reason for that? The ulama have mentioned that this was after one of the children of the Prophet ﷺ passed away, and people took this as a bad omen, and the Prophet ﷺ he rejected this. He said, no, this has got nothing to do with anyone living or dying. These are signs of Allah, and they are there as reminders and warnings from Allah. So the purpose of mentioning that narration, which is actually from Sahih Bukhari, the purpose of mentioning that narration is to highlight that the Prophet ﷺ did actually pray during solar eclipse. There's a narration from Sayyidina Mughira bin Shu'bah radiallahu ta'ala as well. He says that there was a solar eclipse the day, and this is now explaining that narration now. He says that there was a solar eclipse the day that Sayyidina Ibrahim radiallahu ta'ala, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam's son, Sayyidina Ibrahim radiallahu ta'ala, the day he passed away, there was a solar eclipse. And people began to say that the Prophet ﷺ's son has passed away, and that's why there's an eclipse. The sun has become dark. And so the Prophet ﷺ, he stood up and he said, "Inna ash-shamsa wal qamara ayatani min ayatillah." The sun and the moon are signs from the signs of Allah. They don't go into eclipse because of anyone's death or anyone's birth. When you see them, fad'ullah, then call upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and pray until the sun becomes completely clear again. So that instruction there tells us that You should pray, and your prayer should continue throughout the duration of the eclipse. That's narrated in Sahih Bukhari as well. And Imam Sagharji, he says that this prayer of kusuf, of the solar eclipse, this is sunnah muakkada. It's an emphatic sunnah. وَهِيَ رَكْعَتَانِ كَهَيْئَةٍ نَافِلَةٍ. These are 2 units in the same way as you pray any other nafil, in the form of nafil. 2 units in the form of nafil. And this is based upon a narration of Mahmud bin Labid radiyallahu ta'ala. And then that same narration, it's the same incident that it's talking about. It's not the same narration, but the same incident. Because he talks about the lunar eclipse on the day that Sayyidina Ibrahim, the son of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, passed away. And then that same hadith is mentioned. In that hadith it mentions ثُمَّ قَامَ فَقَرَأَ. He says that the Prophet ﷺ stood and led the prayer, and in that unit the Prophet ﷺ, the Prophet ﷺ recited a lengthy recitation, Alif Lam Ra, beginning with Alif Lam Ra, and the Prophet ﷺ did 2 sajdas in that unit, and then he stood up and prayed a second unit in a similar manner. That's narrated in Al-Fath Ar-Rabbani. Sayyidina Nu'man bin Bashir radiyallahu ta'ala, he also narrates, he says that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam prayed Salatul Kusuf, the prayer of the solar eclipse, and he did ruku and sajda in the same way as he would in normal prayer. That's narrated in Al-Fath Ar-Rabbani as well. Sayyidina Samura bin Jundub radiyallahu ta'ala, in a lengthy narration regarding Salatul Kusuf, he says that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam prayed and he led the congregation, and the qiyam was the longest that I have ever seen. He says that I had not seen the Prophet ﷺ stand and do qiyam in prayer so long, for such a long duration before that. And the Prophet ﷺ was not reciting audibly. We couldn't hear the Prophet ﷺ's recitation. And then the Prophet ﷺ did a very long ruku. And in the same, he did the same in the second unit with a lengthy recitation. While the Prophet ﷺ was sitting in the tashahhud, the sun came out of the eclipse. So the Prophet ﷺ's prayer, it seems, actually covered the entire duration of the whole eclipse. That's also from Al-Fath Ar-Rabbani. It's also narrated by Abu Bakr radiyallahu ta'ala, who says that during the time of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, there was a solar eclipse. The Prophet ﷺ hurriedly came to the masjid, people gathered there, and the Prophet ﷺ led them in 2 units of prayer. Also from Al-Fath Ar-Rabbani. So how should you do this? Imam Sagharji says that the Imam of Jum'ah, in other words the lead, the senior Imam, the one who leads Jum'ah usually, And traditionally that would have been, for example, in a whole town, a whole locality, that may have been just one individual. So the head imam who leads Jum'ah should lead the congregation in this prayer, and he should not recite audibly, وَلَا يَجْهَرْ, and he should not address the people. There's no khutbah as well. So basically, there's no khutbah, and there should not be any audible recitation. Why? Because there's no such narration of the Prophet ﷺ reciting audibly or giving khutbah attached with this prayer. And also that hadith of Sayyidina Samura radiallahu ta'ala, if you recall, what did he say? That we could not hear the Prophet ﷺ reciting audibly. Right? So that clearly actually states. So there's no hadith affirming any audible recitation, and on the other hand we do have this narration which says that we didn't hear any audible, so that makes it even more sort of emphasized. The qira'ah, the recitation, should be long. Right? The imam should recite a lengthy recitation, because of all the narrations that are narrated by the Sahaba regarding this prayer of the Prophet ﷺ. And so how long? The imam should recite in the first unit similar length to Surah Al-Baqarah, quite a lengthy recitation, and in the second unit the length of Surah Al-Imran. If this is not possible, Imam Saghabji says that people should pray individually. Sallan nas furada, people should pray individually. Rak'atayn aw arba'a, they should pray 2 units or 4 units. And then they should make dua until the sun comes out of eclipse entirely. Why? Because again, that instruction of the Prophet ﷺ narrated by many different Sahaba. When these things happen, then pray to Allah and remember Allah. Seek forgiveness from Him. In another narration it mentions that come to Salah. When these things happen, come to Salah. And again, the ulama say that Salah there is not in its technical meaning, it's in its more towards its literal meaning of dua. Salah literally means dua. In another narration it says, فَإِذَا رَأَيْتُمْ ذَلِكَ فَاذْكُرُوا اللَّهَ وَكَبِّرُوا, that when you see these kind of signs, then remember Allah and do takbir, like in terms of glorify Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and pray, make dua, give sadaqah. And Imam Saghabji says there's a number of narrations regarding Salatul Kusuf. Amongst them, there is a narration as well which says that this is 2 units, and in every unit there's 2 rukus and 2 sajdas. In one narration it says that there's 2 units, and in every unit there's 3 ruku. And even one which mentions 4 ruku and 5 ruku as well. Wallahu alam, Allah knows best. But the majority of the narrations, and the Hanafi madhab, what it's based upon is those narrations in which it mentions prayer, just as you've seen in previous. That's why Imam Saghabji narrates those narrations where it specifically mentions that the Prophet ﷺ did ruku and sajda just as he did in any other normal prayer. And that's what our madhab is founded upon. In terms of the lunar eclipse, this should be prayed individually, not with Jamaat. Why? Because it's going to happen at night. it's going to happen at night, and it will cause difficulty for people to gather and congregate in the masjid at that time. And so therefore, and there will be perhaps maybe more of an element of fear and danger as well in that congregation, and so it's recommended that the lunar eclipse, the prayer of the lunar eclipse, should be prayed alone, individually, at home. And that's it. That concludes that particular section. The next discussion is Salatul Istisqa. This is the prayer for seeking water, seeking rain, in other words, or water from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
What is it? Istisqa?
Istisqa. With a qaf, 2 dots. Salatul Istisqa. There's nothing to write with here. But Sayyidina Abu Hurairah radiallahu ta'ala, he narrates from the Prophet ﷺ, and this is a hadith Qudsi. Right, so this is where the Prophet ﷺ is narrating from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, hadith Qudsi. The Prophet said, قَالَ رَبُّكُمْ Azza wa Jal, your Lord, most glorified, said that if my people were obedient to me, then I would make it rain during the night and make the sun rise for them in the morning, and they would never hear the sound of thunder, in terms of, there wouldn't be, in other words, storms and destruction of that kind, so and fear out of those things. That's narrated in Sahih Bukhari, that if people were obedient, then they would have abundant rain and the sun would rise for them every day, and that they wouldn't be frightened of any by sound of thunder or storms. And this is because Allah is pleased when people are obedient to Him. Allah wishes for people to obey His commands, to do what He commands and to refrain from what He prohibits. And so He rewards this. Why do they mention rain at night? Because in comparison to the day, if it rains at night, it causes less disruption to people. Especially if you look in those times, and even today in more traditional sort of environments, people are out and about during the day. The excessive rainfall can cause problems during the day. And so it's because of, and during the rain, during the day, for example, it also limits sunlight. And that, again, especially in terms of for agricultural purposes, that could be detrimental as well. So twofold benefits. So in that way, making it rain at night, making the sun rise in the morning, is most helpful. That's most helpful, that it rains during the night, so the water's there, it's provided for, and then the sunlight during the day also provided for. And so Imam Saghati says that difficulties are lifted and raised from those who are obedient to Allah. And that's the metaphor, that's used in terms of them never hearing thunder. Difficulties and afflictions are lifted from them. And so disobedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this invites the anger and wrath of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's because of this that people suffer droughts and they are afflicted with various afflictions. And then he cites a verse of the Quran, Surah An-Nisa, verse number 147. مَا يَفْعَلُ اللَّهُ بِعَذَابِكُمْ إِن شَكَرْتُمْ وَآمَنْتُمْ وَكَانَ اللَّهُ شَاكِرًا عَلِيمًا. That if you were grateful, if you become grateful and accept Iman, why would Allah punish you? Why would Allah punish you if you were grateful and you accepted Iman? In fact, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is acknowledging of people's good deeds, and He's all-knowing. Right? He acknowledges Iman and obedience, faith and obedience, and He's all-knowing. And so, if people become afflicted by drought and other such afflictions, فَهُوَ عَلَامَةٌ عَلَىٰ عَظْمِ رِضَى الرَّبِّ عَنْهُمْ. This is a sign that Allah is displeased with those people. Right? This is an indication that Allah is not pleased with them. And so Imam Saghati says that it is incumbent upon them فَعَلَيْهِمْ أَن يَرْجِعُوا إِلَيْهِ وَيَتُوبُوا وَيَسْتَغْفِرُوا. It is incumbent upon them that they turn to Allah and they repent, seek forgiveness for their sins, until Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala enshrouds them in His mercy, until Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala provides them with water, with rain from His mercy. He tells us that wal aslu fil istisqa, the actual principle, the fundamental principle in seeking rain, in istisqa, is Surah Nuh, verse number 10, 11 and 12. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Istaghfiru rabbakum, seek forgiveness from your Lord. Innahu kana ghaffara, indeed He is most forgiving. Yursilu as-samaa'a alaykum midrara, and He will send down the skies upon you, what, in torrential downpours. Basically, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will open up the skies and the heavens for you and send down continuous rainfall for you. وَيُمْدِدْكُمْ بِأَمْوَالٍ وَبَنِينَ, and He will help you with different types of wealth, with children, offspring. وَيَجْعَلْ لَكُمْ جَنَّاتٍ وَيَجْعَلْ لَكُمْ أَنْهَارًا, and He will make for you gardens, and He will make for you streams that flow with water. So there you see how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala actually encourages istighfar there. The first statement is what? Is istaghfiru rabbakum, seek forgiveness from your Lord, because He is most forgiving. And then immediately after that, what does Allah say? He will send down torrential downpour on you, or continuous rain for you. So in those verses, Allah has attached rainfall with istighfar. In Surah Hud, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in verse number 52, وَيَا قَوْمِ اسْتَغْفِرُوا رَبَّكُمْ. And this is one of the prophets of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala saying this to his people, and O my people, istaghfiru rabbakum, seek forgiveness from your Lord, thumma tubu ilayhi, then turn in repentance towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, yursilis samaa alaykum midrara, the same expression there, that he will send down ample rainfall for you, he will open up the heavens for you, وَيَزِدْكُمْ قُوَّةً إِلَىٰ قُوَّتِكُمْ, and he will give you further strength, he will add further strength to your strength. Again we see this attachment between istighfar and tawbah and rainfall. قال أبو حنيفة رحمه الله تعالى, he then tells us that Imam Abu Hanifa رحمه الله تعالى says, ليس في الاستسقاء صلاة مسنونة بجماعة. There is no sunnah congregational prayer for Salatul Istisqa, for this prayer for seeking rain from Allah. There's no sunnah congregational prayer. Why? Because وَإِنَّمَا الْإِسْتِسْقَاءُ دُعَاء وَالْإِسْتِغْفَارُ. Because istisqa, seeking rain from Allah, this is a dua, it's a supplication. Wal istighfar, and seeking forgiveness from Allah. Lil ayatain al mutaqaddimatain, based on the two verses, the two previously mentioned verses. This is istighfar and tawbah and istighfar and dua. In addition to this, there's a narration narrated from Sayyidina Anas bin Malik radiyallahu ta'ala أن رجلا دخل يوم الجمعة من باب, and this is narrated by Imam Bukhari in his Sahih. And it's a beautiful narration. The person came on the day of Jum'ah from one of the doors, and he was directly facing the mimbar, the pulpit of the Prophet ﷺ. وَرَسُولُ اللَّهِ قَائِمٌ يَخْطُبُ. The Prophet ﷺ was standing and he was delivering his sermon. فَاسْتَقْبَلَ رَسُولُ اللَّهِ صَلَى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وسلم قَائِمًا فَقَالَ. He stood up in front of the Prophet, he faced the Prophet ﷺ, standing up, and he said out aloud, he said, Ya Rasulullah ﷺ, هَلَكَتِ الْأَمْوَالِ وَانْقَطَعَتِ السُّبُلِ فَادْعُ اللَّهَ. He said to the Prophet ﷺ, Ya Rasulullah ﷺ, our livestock is dying, our crops are destroyed, our livestock is dying, it's becoming difficult for us to travel. So he asked the Prophet ﷺ to pray. He said, Fad Allah, Ya Rasulullah, ask Allah to pray to Allah, ask Him to send down rain upon us. And so the narrator, Sayyidina Anas bin Malik radiallahu anhu, he says, فَرَفَعَ رَسُولُ اللَّهِ صَلَّى وسلم يَدَيْهِ. The Prophet ﷺ raised his hands. And he said, O Allah, give us rain. O Allah, send down rain for us. 3 times the Prophet ﷺ prayed. Allahumma asqina, O Allah, satiate us with water, provide water for us. Sayyidina Anas bin Malik radiallahu anhu, he says, Wala wallahi ma nara fi as-sama'i min sahabin. He says, I swear by Allah that there wasn't a single cloud in the sky when the Prophet raised his hand. This is Sayyidina Anas bin Malik radiallahu ta'ala. He says that I swear by Allah that there wasn't a single cloud anywhere in the sky to be seen. And but he says that as soon as the Prophet ﷺ raised his hand, we could see clouds gathering above us, and it started to rain. And so he says for a whole week we didn't see the sun. It rained continuously. Then the same person entered from that same door on the day of Jum'ah, the following Jum'ah that is, and the Prophet ﷺ was standing delivering a sermon again, and he faced the Prophet ﷺ and he stood and he said, Ya Rasulullah ﷺ, now our livestock or crops etc. are being destroyed because of water. Paths are difficult to tread because of excessive water. Ask Allah to stop the rain. And so the Prophet ﷺ raised his hands, and the Prophet ﷺ said, Oh Allah, make it rain around us, not on top of us. And so it says that it stopped raining in the city of Medina. It continued to rain for days and weeks outside the city of Medina all around. So there's different narrations about this. In one narration it mentions Sayyidina Anas bin Malik radiallahu ta'ala, he says that we saw, when the Prophet said, Oh Allah, make it rain around us, we saw the clouds split into two, left and right. And left and right, either side of the city, it was raining, and in between, the whole city completely dry. And in another narration it says that it was raining all around Medina, but it didn't rain in Medina even one raindrop in the city, but it was raining all around the city. So it actually mentions in those narrations that it was, basically it was raining all around the city, like a ring around the city, and inside the city there wasn't a single raindrop. And this is, for anyone who doubts the potency of du'as of the Prophet ﷺ, this is a major reference. It's a sound narration narrated by Imam Bukhari and Imam Muslim, and it shows you the power of Rasulullah ﷺ's du'a. There's another narration as well which Imam Sagharji narrates, very similar to this, and perhaps the same incident, about a Bedouin who came on the day of Jummah and asked the Prophet ﷺ to pray for rain. And so the Prophet ﷺ raised his hands, and all the people with the Prophet ﷺ raised their hands, and he says that we had not left the masjid and it started raining. And it continued to rain until the next Jummah, and then the same person came to the Prophet ﷺ and said, Ya Rasulullah, ask Allah to make it stop. And then the Prophet ﷺ and then it stopped as well. So similar narration again. In this narration, it actually mentions that the Prophet ﷺ says, ثم لم ينزل عن منبره حتى رأيت المطر حَتَّى رَأَيْتُ الْمَطَرَ, he says that the Prophet ﷺ did not descend from the mimbar, he didn't come down from the mimbar until I saw raindrops falling through the Prophet ﷺ's beard. So that's the view, that was mentioning the view of Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah ta'ala, which was what? That there's no sunnah congregational prayer for istisqa, it's just dua and istighfar. Based on those verses of the Quran and these ahadith in which the Prophet ﷺ simply raised his hands and made dua, didn't pray, didn't give any khutbah. Regarding that narration, some of I've heard from one of my shuyukh, something really I found quite beautiful and really in keeping with the mood of the Sahaba and their behavior towards the Prophet ﷺ, which is what, that everybody's sitting outside and it starts to rain. When do you realize that it's raining? When the rain falls on you, or when you see raindrops on the person in front of you. But they're so engrossed in the vision of Rasulullah ﷺ that perhaps he didn't even realize it's raining until he saw the raindrops falling down, trickling down the Prophet ﷺ's beard. And in terms of also, I've mentioned this hadith recently in a couple of my lectures regarding Sayyidina Imam Hussain radiallahu anhu, because some people, they raise questions, why didn't the Prophet, if the Prophet ﷺ knew that he was going to be martyred, why didn't he do anything? If he could do anything, why didn't he pray for him, and so on. But if you want to see how the du'as of the Prophet ﷺ are accepted, then just look at those narrations and see how it rains on command of the Prophet ﷺ, it stops on command of the Prophet ﷺ, and it doesn't just rain in the most strange fashion, that it's raining all around the city and there's not a single raindrop in the city. That's all with the dua of the Prophet ﷺ. And yes, if the Prophet ﷺ wanted, then he could, but the Prophet ﷺ did do dua. Who said he didn't? The dua was, Allahumma atil Husayna sabran wa ajra. The dua was for Allah to grant Sayyidina Imam Hussain radiallahu ta'ala sabr and patience. And he was the likes of which the world may never see, will never see again. So don't say the Prophet ﷺ didn't do anything, or that the dua, why didn't he make dua? Because he did, and it was accepted, because that remarkable sabr and patience that was shown by Imam Hussain radiallahu ta'ala was most certainly to do with the nurturing that he received from the Prophet ﷺ and his parents, but also that dua of the Prophet ﷺ as well. And I personally find it insulting, if some would find it insulting if someone was to say that Imam Hussain radiallahu ta'ala, he was completely helpless. If he wished, the heavens would have poured down upon them if he prayed. And there could have been another Zamzam at his heels if he wished. And the river Euphrates would have come to him. He didn't need to go to seek water. But it's similar to Sayyidina Ibrahim alayhi salam. There's a narration that when he was about to be cast into fire by Namrud, Jibreel alayhi salam came and he said to him, O friend of Allah, Sayyidina Ibrahim alayhi salam, Khalilullah, ahallaka min haja, do you have any need? Can I help you? Can I assist you in any way? And Ibrahim alayhi salam asked him, he said, have you come of your own accord, or has Allah sent you? And he said, I've come of my own accord. I've seen you in distress and I've come to see if you need any help. And he said, in that case, I don't need any help. And if Allah wishes for me to burn, I will burn happily. If Allah wishes to save me, He will make provisions to save me. That is called being happy with the qadar of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's true patience and sabr. So again, that same principle can be applied there, with Imam Hussain radiallahu anhu, that if Allah wished, He would provide for the water for them, but he did not make that request himself. on that same and similar basis, that if Allah wishes to provide, He will provide. But this was a sacrifice that was required for the continuation of Islam in its true form. Anyway, we get sidetracked there. So Imam Abu Yusuf and Imam Muhammad, the Sahibain, what's their view? They say that the Imam should lead the people in 2 units of prayer. According to them, those 2 units are Sunnah. And the Imam should recite audibly in them. The recitation should be similar to the recitation that's done on Eid prayer. Imam Abu Yusuf, he says that the Imam should even give 1 single khutbah. Imam Muhammad, he says the Imam should give 2 khutbahs, just like on Jumu'ah or other occasions. But according to them, that khutbah should be based around istighfar, around seeking forgiveness from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He should then face the Qibla and make dua, supplicate. And after completing the dua and the khutbah, he should turn his cloak. Now what does that mean? That's a specific act that is done. So the Imam should take with him a shawl or a cloak, should be laid out onto the ground, and from opposing corners it should be lifted and turned upside down. What's the purpose behind that? It's an expression of helplessness before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, basically, and reliance solely on Allah, that without Allah there's no one that can help us. And in itself, this action is considered a dua, a supplication, that you're asking Allah, just as we have turned that cloak, that we are repenting, we are promising to mend our ways, and you're asking Allah to turn your destiny in that same way and grant you rain.
Even just the act on itself.
Yeah. And then he should pray. He should stand up and pray. The people, however, should not do this. It's just the Imam that should do this. It's Fiqh Yr3, as it's called, to turning the cloak. Just the Imam should do this. Their basis is a narration by Abbad bin Tamim. And he narrates from his uncle, who was one of the Sahaba, one of the companions of the Prophet ﷺ. He says that the Prophet ﷺ one day left with the people to do istisqa, to seek rain from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He stood up, he prayed to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala standing, then he faced the Qibla, and he did this practice of overturning turning the shawl and the cloak, and they were given rain, they were blessed with rain. In another narration narrated by him from his uncle again, he says that the Prophet ﷺ left with the people for istisqa, seeking rain. He turned towards the Qibla, he turned his cloak, and then he prayed 2 units in which he recited audibly. And so that's the first one. It mentions both of them, those 2 narrations, the turning of the cloak, praying, and then praying with audible recitation, and then also it talks about dua as well, and istighfar. So that narration is from Sahih Bukhari, or those narrations. And so, according to them, if it's a square-shaped cloth, then turn the top down to the bottom, and if it's sort of more rectangular, then turn it left to right, from side to side, over the long side. When they leave for prayer, the people should be extremely humble and fearful of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Why? Because this aids acceptance of dua. Duas are accepted. Humility is key. Humility and sincerity is key in acceptance of dua. They should express great humility. They shouldn't hurry. They should walk calmly in a contented manner with humility, and it should be a congregation of Muslims again, because the purpose is to pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and you're looking for acceptance. Once it starts to rain, it's recommended that you should try to allow yourself to be wet by the rain. So basically embrace that rain and actually rub it onto the body as well. Why? Because Sayyidina Anas bin Malik radiallahu ta'ala, he says that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam wet his clothes with the rain. And we asked, we said, Ya Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Lima sana'ta hadha? Why did you do this, O Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam? And so the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam told them, he said that because this has just right this moment been sent down by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it's descended from Allah right this very moment. That this is the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You should seek blessings from it. And for a Muslim, Imam Sagharji, he quotes from Imam Nawawi here, he says, for a Muslim, it is necessary to associate that rainfall with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, even though the physical means are the clouds. But this is a necessary part of his belief, and this will again be effective in his prayer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Sayyidina Abu Hurairah radiallahu ta'ala, he narrates from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that Allah sends down rain from the heavens, and then people split up into two groups. Some of them ascribe this to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and others become disbelievers. They say this was sent down because of such and such a star and such a false deity. This becomes a means of people's beliefs becoming corrupted. Narrated in Sahih Muslim. Sayyidina Abdullah bin Abbas radiallahu ta'ala, he narrates that it rained during the time of the Prophet ﷺ on one occasion, and the Prophet ﷺ, he said that people become grateful, but amongst them are disbelievers, because some of them, they say hazihi rahmatullah, this is the mercy of Allah. وَقَالَ بَعْضُهُمْ, and others say such and such as persons sort of his foretelling this has come true. And so this verse was then revealed. فَلَا أُقْسِمُ بِمَوَاقِعِ النُّجُومِ Surah Al-Waqi'ah, verse number 75 up to verse number 82. And within that, what those verses actually say is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala takes an oath in the name of stars that set. And he says, if you understand, this is a great oath. This Quran is one of great dignity and status. It is recorded in a hidden book, that which no one but those who are pure can touch, that has descended from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, from the Lord. And do you take this as something just superficial, and all you take from it is that you reject it? So these verses were revealed in condemnation of those people who rejected the Quran Majid and falsified their beliefs, in particular with reference to ascribing rainfall and other such other such actions of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to others. That's the connection there. So going back to what Imam Nawawi said, that your firm belief should be, although yes, the clouds are a means of rain and they are the physical means, but your firm belief should be that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the creator of all of this. Right, that alhamdulillah, we conclude at very opportune or apt place, because that concludes the different sections on nafil prayers, or different types of nafil prayers. And the next section we're going on to is a major section on prostration of forgetfulness. Sujood as-sahw. Right, any questions from that lecture? No? Okay. So